Have you ever questioned what truly happens in the moments after your last breath? Not the myths, not the religious hand-me-downs, but the real journey your soul takes when the body goes still. There's a manuscript, over 1,200 years old, so profound and dangerous that entire institutions work to keep it hidden. Why? Because it reveals the exact process your consciousness goes through in the first 49 days after death, and how you could escape the cycle of rebirth forever. For centuries, only monks and mystics were allowed to see this. Today, you're going to hear it. But once you know the truth, there's no going back. You've been lied to about death your entire life. It was never the end, it was a door. And once that door opens, what happens next depends entirely on one thing: your awareness. Right now, you're alive. You can feel your breath, hear my voice. Your body is the anchor to this world, but one day, maybe sooner than you expect, it will release you. Your final breath will slip from your lips. Your heart will stop, and in that moment, you will be more alive than ever before. But you won't know that unless you remember. There is an ancient Tibetan text, banned, hidden, suppressed, known as the bardo, or as the world calls it today, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's not a religious myth, it's a spiritual map, a guidebook written for you, the soul, in the moments after death. Not for priests, not for scholars, for you. This book doesn't tell stories, it reveals stages, real, energetic dimensions your soul will pass through in the 49 days following your death. And if you're not prepared, you'll fall asleep again. You'll reincarnate, you'll forget, and the cycle will repeat. But if you are aware, if you are present, you can liberate yourself, right there, right then. So let's start with the moment it all changes. When death arrives, it doesn't knock, it doesn't announce itself, it simply comes. Maybe it's peaceful, maybe it's violent, maybe it's a slow letting go or a sudden jolt. But regardless of how it happens, the process is the same. First, the elements of your body begin to dissolve. Tibetan masters say that our body is made of 5 primary elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. And as death takes over, each one of these elements breaks down one by one. You feel the earth element leave you first. The feeling of heaviness, of solidity starts to disappear. Your limbs feel light, like they're floating. Gravity loses its grip. Then comes water. Your mouth dries, your tongue stiffens, sweat stops, saliva vanishes. The liquidity of your body fades, and a deep inner emptiness replaces it. Next is fire. Warmth escapes, your body cools. The heat of life, the fire of digestion, of transformation, of energy, burns out. You grow cold. Air follows. Breathing slows. The in and out rhythm you've known since birth fades. There's a final breath, then silence, and then space. The collapse of all the senses. Sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, gone. Nothingness opens. This is the threshold, and on the other side of it, something extraordinary happens. You experience the clear light of reality. Not a light in the sky, not a beam or a tunnel. This is not something outside you. It is the pure awareness behind all awareness, the truth of who you are, without a body, without a story, without even a name. In this moment you are met with a brilliance that words cannot contain, an infinite field of presence, pure, eternal, undivided. And here's the most important part. If you recognize this light, if you remember that this light is you, then you are instantly liberated. No rebirth, no karma, no cycle. You become one with the Absolute. But that's not what usually happens. For most people, the light is too intense, too unfamiliar. They recoil, they grasp, they panic, they cling to who they think they are. A name, a face, a role, a past. And the moment they resist, the light fades. Just like that, it's gone, and the journey begins. This is the start of the bardo, the in-between, a realm where your thoughts, memories, desires, and fears take form, not symbolically, literally. In the bardo, your mind is the world. What you imagine becomes your reality. But here's the catch. Most souls don't know they're dreaming. They think it's real. They see deities, demons, loved ones, cities, temples, lights, darkness. Some encounter terrifying shapes, others angelic figures, but all of it is their own mind projected outward. You might be wondering, how can that be? Because you've already seen it in dreams. Haven't you ever woken up from a dream where it felt so real your body reacted, your heart raced, you were sweating, maybe even crying? Now, imagine that, but amplified by infinity. That's what the bardo is like. And this is why spiritual masters have said again and again, if you don't train your mind in life, you will be lost in death. You see, the bardo isn't something you encounter once. You've already experienced fragments of it. When you lose someone, when you fall in love, when you stare at the stars and forget your name. These are moments the veil thins. But in death, the veil is torn completely. And for 49 days your consciousness navigates this shifting, symbolic and often terrifying terrain. But it's not a punishment, it's a test. And it's also your greatest opportunity. Because even though you missed the first chance, the clear light, you get others. Multiple moments scattered through the bardo where recognition can still happen, where liberation is still possible. But only if you can recognize what's not real. Only if you can look at a vision, peaceful or wrathful, and say, this is my mind. This is not ultimate reality. If you can do that, even once, you're free. You begin to see forms, colors, sounds that don't come from any ear. At first they're beautiful, radiant beings glowing with peaceful light. Their presence feels divine, serene. They speak in tones you've never heard before yet somehow understand. These are the peaceful deities. But don't let the word deity mislead you. These are not gods outside of you. They are reflections, manifestations of your deepest virtues: compassion, wisdom, clarity, love. And if you recognize them for what they are, projections of your own enlightened nature, they dissolve into light, and so do you. But if you fall into desire, if you cling to their beauty, their form, their false sense of safety, the illusion thickens, the light dims again, and now the second wave begins. The wrathful ones appear. They are monstrous, terrifying. Their faces contort, they scream, they chase you, rip through the sky. You feel your entire being tremble in their presence. These forms are nightmares made real. But here's the secret that even many spiritual seekers miss. These so-called demons aren't trying to hurt you. They're not evil. They're your fears, your guilt, your rage, your shame. They're the shadow parts of you you've refused to face in life, now made impossible to ignore. And yet, even now, you have a chance. If you can stop running, turn around and look them in the eye, they vanish. Because they never existed outside of your mind. And the moment you recognize that, you take another step toward liberation. But again, most don't. Most souls scream. They beg for help. They try to fight what can't be fought. And they tumble deeper. By now, days have passed. Not in human time. Time here doesn't flow. It pulses, expands, collapses. A second could feel like a lifetime, or 1,000 years could feel like a single breath. This is the nature of the bardo. Nothing is fixed. And in this fluidity, something else begins to happen. You see your life again. Not as a movie, but as a mirror. Every word you spoke, every intention you held, every time you were cruel or kind or silent when you should have spoken, it all comes back. But here's the twist. You don't experience it from your perspective. You feel it from theirs. If you once caused someone pain, you now feel that pain ripple through their heart as if it were your own. If you offered someone love, you feel the warmth flood their body as if it's flooding yours. There is no separation. The illusion of you and them dissolves. This is the life review, but it's not for judgment, it's for awareness. No voice condemns you, no angel holds a clipboard. This is your own soul, holding up the mirror and asking, "Do you see who you've been?" It's not meant to punish, it's meant to teach, because everything you experience here builds momentum, and that momentum, becomes karma. Not karma as a reward or punishment, karma as energy, as echo, as trajectory. Every thought, every choice, every clinging moment, all of it adds weight, and that weight determines what happens next. Because soon you'll feel it. The pull, a magnetic draw toward a new form, a new life, a new body, and unless you've detached, unless you've truly let go, you'll be pulled into it, not pushed, not forced, pulled by your own unconscious desires. And here's the most tragic part. Most souls don't even realize it's happening. They see a light in the distance, a comforting face, a mother's womb, a voice calling them home, and they enter, thinking it's the end of the tunnel. But it's the beginning, rebirth, a new incarnation. And just like that, you forget. Your past life, the bardo, the clear light, all of it. You take your first breath again, you cry, you open your eyes, and the cycle begins anew. This is how most souls remain trapped. Not by punishment, not by judgment, but by unawareness. And that's exactly why this 1,200-year-old manuscript was considered dangerous. Because it tells the truth. It tells you that death is not a singular moment. It's a process, a test, a spiritual gauntlet that unfolds over 49 symbolic days. And during that time, every illusion you believed in life comes to the surface. Your attachments, your fears, your identity, and only those who have trained their awareness can navigate it with clarity. That's why Tibetan monks spent entire lifetimes preparing for death, not because they feared it, but because they understood it as the ultimate opportunity. They meditated on impermanence, practiced dying before death, rehearsed the dissolution of ego so that when the moment came, they wouldn't flinch. They would remember. They would recognize the light, and they would be free. But here's where it gets personal. Because you're not a monk in a monastery, you're not in a cave in the Himalayas. You're living a modern life, with distractions, noise, screens, fear, constant stimulation pulling your mind outward, never inward. But that doesn't mean you're excluded. In fact, it means your preparation matters even more. Because if you wait until death to become conscious, it's too late. And if you die the way you've lived, unaware, reactive, distracted, you will fall asleep in the bardo just like you fall asleep in your life. That's the harsh truth most people avoid. They think spirituality is about rituals, beliefs, affirmations. But it's not. It's about awareness. And death is the ultimate mirror for how awake you truly are. So ask yourself this now. What are you clinging to? What are you afraid to lose? What part of yourself are you unwilling to look at? Because those exact things will show up in the bardo. And they will take shape. And they will ask you the only question that matters. Are you ready to let go? Because until you are, you'll keep coming back. Some souls cling to their name, their face, their story. They've spent their entire life building an identity they believe is real, not knowing it was only ever a mask. So when that mask is stripped away, they panic. They reach for something, anything, to hold on to. But there's nothing, just the raw truth of consciousness staring back at itself. And for many, that truth is unbearable. This is why the bardo becomes a realm of projections. Because you can't face the formless, you create form. You manifest symbols to fill the void. You resurrect characters from your past, family, lovers, enemies, holy figures. They appear not as they were, but as your mind remembers them. The more attached you were to a person, a role, a belief, the more they take shape, not to comfort you, but to test you. Some figures will promise safety, others will try to seduce you, some will terrify you into submission, but all of them are illusions, reflections of your unhealed patterns and unresolved desires. and the only way through them is awareness. If you can remember even for a moment that these are not external forces but inner symbols, you dissolve them, you wake up a little more, you move closer to freedom. But if you fall for the trick, if you mistake the dream for reality, you sink deeper. Eventually, the visions shift again. They become faster, more chaotic. You see flashes of strange worlds, beings, landscapes that make no sense to the rational mind. Some are beautiful, oceans made of light, mountains that breathe, skies filled with endless stars that whisper your name. Others are horrifying. Endless deserts of sorrow, storms of screaming faces, fires that don't burn the body but burn the soul. These are not punishments. They are frequencies, possibilities, entire realms birthed from your karmic signature. Think of it like tuning a radio. Your vibration determines which channel you're aligned with, and the emotions you've carried, love, fear, guilt, peace, are shaping what you see. The more attached you were in life, the more you'll be pulled toward similar frequencies. If your life was dominated by resentment or shame, those emotions become magnets in the bardo. They lock you into realms that mirror your inner state. But if your life was lived with compassion, mindfulness, and surrender, you rise. You move through higher planes. You start to remember. You've been here before. And in this remembering, another opportunity emerges. You hear a voice, not from outside, but from deep within. It doesn't speak in language, it vibrates through your being, a knowing, a whisper that says, let go, over and over, let go. But letting go isn't passive, it's the most courageous act you'll ever face. It means surrendering your attachments, your unfinished business, your desire to come back and fix something, to rewrite a mistake, to see a loved one again, to finally get it right. But all of that is the trap, because desire is the anchor to rebirth. And this is the moment the wheel begins to spin again. You start to feel drawn, not pushed, but gently pulled. You see flickers of life, scenes of families, parents, new bodies forming. You feel emotion rising, longing, hope, maybe even curiosity. And unless you're aware of what's happening, you'll follow that thread. You'll step into that womb and you'll start again with a new name, a new story, a new forgetfulness. You see, rebirth isn't forced, it's chosen by unconscious momentum. But if you're aware, if you catch the pull, you can pause. You can ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this true? Am I ready to dissolve completely? And if the answer is yes, you rise above the wheel. This is why the Tibetan Book of the Dead was considered too dangerous for the public, because it puts the power back in your hands. It doesn't tell you to pray for salvation. It doesn't ask you to believe in a deity. It tells you that liberation has always been an inside job, that the entire cycle of life, death and rebirth, is governed by your mind. And if your mind is untrained, unobserved, unfocused, then you're at its mercy. But if your mind becomes clear, still, luminous, you become free. This is why death is the most important part of life. Not because it's the end, but because it reveals the truth that all the chasing, all the running, all the needing and striving and building was a distraction. And the only thing that ever mattered was your state of awareness. You could spend your whole life collecting success, power, validation, but none of it comes with you. Not a single moment, not a single possession. The only thing you carry beyond the veil is your consciousness, your emotional blueprint, your vibrational state, and that becomes your compass in the afterlife. So the real question isn't what happens after I die. The real question is, what am I becoming right now? Because death doesn't start at the final breath, it starts with your first. And every thought, every word, every reaction, every act of kindness or cruelty, it's all adding up. Not in some judgmental ledger, but in your energy field, in your vibration. And when the body is gone, that vibration becomes your entire reality. This is why the mystics didn't wait to die before practicing death. They died daily to the ego, to attachment, to illusion. They rehearsed the art of letting go, not once, not occasionally, but constantly. Because when you practice dying in life, you don't fear death. You recognize it, you welcome it, you pass through it like a gate you've opened 1,000 times before. And in that moment, when the clear light returns, you don't run. You remember, you merge, and you are free. That's the secret the world has forgotten. Not because it's hidden, but because no one looks. We're too busy, too distracted, too terrified to face the mirror. But the mirror is coming, and it will show you everything. Not to punish, not to shame, but to awaken. And when it comes, you'll be ready. Because you heard this. Because something inside you knows this. Because deep down you've always remembered. Now, the only question that remains is, will you live like someone who's already died? Or will you die like someone who never truly lived? Imagine living hundreds of lives and never realizing it. Waking up in different bodies, different worlds, different identities, yet forgetting every time. Believing this one is the only one, that your struggles are unique, that your desires are original, but all of it is repetition, cycles, loops, programs written by the same force, your own unconscious mind. That's what reincarnation is, not a reward, not a punishment, but a reflection, a mirror held up by the universe saying, here's another chance to remember who you are. You may think rebirth happens because of some divine decision, some external judgment, but it's not like that. It's much simpler. You carry the vibration of your life with you into death. That vibration matches certain frequencies, and those frequencies attract you to environments, parents, bodies, and lives that resonate with that same energetic code. It's not fate. It's resonance. And until you change that frequency, you return again and again to the same kinds of experiences, just wearing different masks. You think you've never done this before, but you have. You've died in war. You've watched loved ones leave. You've held your child as they took their last breath. You've begged for forgiveness. You've hidden your light. You've shone too brightly and scared people away. And every time you thought it was the first time. But your soul remembers. That ache in your chest when you hear a song from nowhere, that strange pull toward a culture you've never studied, that fear of drowning, even though you've never touched the ocean. It's not coincidence. It's memory leaking through the cracks. But there's something even more profound. You don't just reincarnate based on what happened to you. You reincarnate based on how you responded. If you lived with bitterness, you carry bitterness. If you forgave, you carry peace. Your next life is built not on what was done, but on what you did with it. That's karma, not cosmic punishment, but energetic architecture. You're not a victim. You're a builder, and you've been building lives out of the bricks of your beliefs for longer than you can imagine. Now imagine what happens when a soul becomes aware of this, when someone breaks the pattern. Not just by being good, not by obeying rules, but by truly waking up. That soul becomes lucid in the dream, and in that lucidity they begin to shape the dream itself. They stop clinging, they stop reacting, they start watching, observing, surrendering. And when they die, they recognize the light, not as something to reach for, but as something they've always been. That's why the Tibetan Book of the Dead exists. It's not a religious relic. It's a manual for conscious dying. And it was never meant to be reserved for monks or mystics alone. It was meant for you, but over time it was buried, distorted, wrapped in ritual and obscured by dogma, because a soul that knows how to die consciously cannot be controlled, and institutions are built on control. Think about it. A world where people don't fear death is a world where manipulation breaks down, where fear-based obedience loses its grip, where people stop sacrificing their lives for systems that promise safety in the afterlife. Religions would crumble, political empires would weaken, entire industries built on fear would dissolve, and that is dangerous to those in power. So the truth had to be hidden. Not erased, just buried under layers of distraction, made so obscure that only the most dedicated would find it. And that's why you're hearing it now. Because something in you is ready, not just to live differently, but to die differently. And that changes everything. Because once you stop fearing death, you start living with power. You stop compromising your truth. You stop chasing illusions. You stop selling your soul for comfort. You begin to make decisions from a place of clarity, not survival. And when that shift happens, the bardo becomes less of a trap and more of a bridge, a gateway between illusions and infinity. The masters have always said to be truly alive, you must die before you die. That doesn't mean ending your life. It means ending the illusion, ending the belief that you are the body, that you are your name, that you are what people think of you. You are none of that. You never were. You are awareness, timeless, infinite, unbreakable. And the moment you realize that, not as a concept but as an embodied truth, death loses its power. This is why some people, even on their deathbed, radiate peace. You've seen it. A stillness in their eyes, a softness in their breath. They're not afraid. Because they know, maybe not in words, maybe not in doctrine, but in their bones, in their breath, in their silence. They remember. And when the light comes, they do not flinch. They become it. But if you wait until the moment of death to prepare, it may be too late. Not because you'll be punished, but because you won't be ready to see. The light will come and you'll mistake it for something foreign. You'll turn away and the dream will begin again. The womb, the forgetting, the pain, the yearning, the whole cycle, one more time. So you have to ask yourself, what are you doing now to prepare? Not in some morbid way, not in fear, but in reverence, in devotion, because the real secret isn't about how to die, it's about how to live in a way that honors death. When you face your fears now, you're preparing. When you sit in silence and watch your thoughts pass, you're preparing. When you let go of an identity you've outgrown, you're preparing. When you forgive, when you love, when you stop clinging to things that were never meant to stay, you are preparing. This is the great paradox. The more you prepare for death, the more fully you live. You become fearless, clear, anchored in what matters. You stop wasting time. You stop pretending. You stop playing the role and start showing up as the witness. And in that presence, you begin to dissolve the karma that once bound you. Because karma is just unconsciousness. It's energy set in motion without awareness. But when awareness enters the picture, karma begins to unravel. Cycles begin to collapse. Illusions lose their grip. And the path forward opens, not toward another life, but toward liberation. You don't need to escape the world. You don't need to renounce everything. You only need to wake up, right now, in this breath, because this moment is the seed of every other moment, and how you meet it will shape everything. So, don't wait for death to reveal the truth. Use life to discover it. Live with eyes open, heart open, mind still. Let this be your training ground, your temple, your practice field for the afterlife, because when the time comes, and it will come, you won't be caught off guard. You'll step into the bardo, not as a confused soul clinging to form, but as a luminous being of awareness, moving through illusion like wind moves through mist. And in that moment, you'll know. You've already won. There's something you need to understand about truth. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It waits. Quiet, patient, hidden beneath layers of noise and illusion, and the most powerful truths, the ones that can shatter lifetimes of forgetting, are often the ones we've been trained to ignore. Not because they aren't beautiful, but because they make you responsible. The moment you realize that every part of your death experience is shaped by your mind, you also realize that every moment of your life has been training for it. Your reactions, your attachments, the thoughts you replay, the emotions you suppress, all of it becomes the raw material that death uses to build your afterlife. And suddenly, heaven and hell are not distant places. They are states of consciousness, echo chambers of your own vibration. When you live unconsciously, death becomes chaos, a blur of confusion and terror. Because the moment the familiar disappears, your mind scrambles to rebuild it. It projects fantasies, fears, constructs reality after reality, trying to make sense of the unknown. But when you live consciously, when you've sat with your own silence and stared into the void without running, death becomes a continuation, a gentle unfolding, a doorway, not a destruction. This is why the sages of every ancient culture prepared for death in secret, not because they feared it, but because they knew it was sacred, the final exam of a life spent in practice. And if passed, it would end the game. No more cycles, no more returning, no more forgetting who you are. But that knowledge was stolen from you, not overtly, not by force, but subtly, systematically. You were taught to fear death, not to revere it, to avoid thinking about it, to push it away with distractions, to pretend that youth lasts forever, and that one day some system, some savior, some ritual would save you from the inevitable. But the truth is, nothing saves you but your own awareness. That's why this manuscript, the one written over 1,000 years ago and hidden from the masses, was considered dangerous, because it didn't tell you to worship anything, it didn't ask you to follow blindly, it gave you a roadmap, a key, and that key opens the only door that matters, the door between illusion and liberation. They didn't want you to have it, because a being who understands death cannot be manipulated through fear. A being who understands death cannot be sold false promises. A being who understands death becomes sovereign, radiant, awake. So instead you were given a substitute. You were told death is the end, or worse, a judgment, a place where someone else decides your worth. You were told to live for heaven or fear hell. You were told to obey, to conform, to perform. And yet, in all those stories, you were never taught how to recognize your own mind. You were never taught that the visions after death are yours, that the demons are your fears, that the angels are your potential, that the light is your true nature. You were trained to look outward, but liberation has always been inward. That's why now matters more than ever, because something in you is waking up. You feel it, a stirring, a remembering, a pull towards something you can't quite name but know is real. That pull is not random. It's the soul remembering its contract, remembering that it came here not to sleep but to awaken, and the awakening doesn't begin at death, it begins now. Every act of awareness brings you closer. Every breath taken with presence rewrites your karma. Every time you choose love over fear, stillness over noise, truth over comfort, you are collapsing lifetimes of unconsciousness in a single heartbeat. This is not just philosophy, this is transformation. You are a soul standing at the edge of a dream. Behind you, thousands of lives. Ahead of you, the unknown. But within you, the spark of eternity. And that spark is all you need. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to renounce the world. You don't need to escape to a monastery. You only need to remember. Remember who you are beneath the layers, beneath the opinions, the stories, the wounds, beneath the roles you've played so well you almost believe them. Because death strips all of it away. You won't take your success with you, or your failures, or your social media following, or your regrets, or your accomplishments. You won't even take your name. All that remains is consciousness. Clear, naked, pure. And in that moment, the only thing that determines your fate is how well you knew yourself. Not the self you crafted for the world, but the self that watches, the self that never changes, the witness behind the thoughts, the silence behind the sound. That is the you that lives beyond death. And here's the part no one tells you. You can meet that self now, in this moment. You don't need to wait. You don't need to die to awaken. You only need to get quiet, still, present, and listen. Listen not with your ears, but with your being. There's a frequency that's always been calling you, a subtle vibration beneath the chaos. You felt it before, in the quiet moments, in nature, in meditation, in music that made you cry for no reason. That's the soul whispering, wake up. That's the light behind the veil, reminding you, this isn't all there is. And once you hear that call, you can't unhear it. You may try to go back to the illusion, you may try to numb it, but it will follow you, because the soul doesn't forget once it remembers. And every day from here on is a choice. You can live like death is your enemy, or you can live like it's your teacher. You can run from it, or walk beside it. Let it shape your priorities. Let it burn away what doesn't matter. Let it remind you that this body is a temporary temple, and what you do with it echoes through eternity. Don't wait for permission to awaken. Don't wait for a sign. This is your sign. This is your soul reaching through space and sound to shake you gently by the shoulders and say, you were never meant to sleep this long. You were meant to remember, to rise, to walk through the illusions with eyes wide open. And when the moment of death arrives, not as a thief, but as an old friend, you will not run, you will bow, you will smile, and you will step through that final veil with power. Because you'll know you already passed the test. You remembered who you are, and that is everything. The final days in the bardo aren't what most people expect. By now the soul has passed through visions, tests, reflections. It has faced its shadow, it has glimpsed its light, and still, many remain unaware. Because the deeper you go into the bardo, the more tempting the illusion becomes. It starts to feel like a dream you don't want to wake from. The pain softens, the chaos fades. Familiar patterns re-emerge, but it's not peace, it's sedation. The soul begins to forget what it was seeking in the first place, and that forgetting is the true danger. You begin to feel longing again, not terror, not confusion, longing, a pull toward comfort, toward sensation, toward form, toward the womb. It feels safe, it feels like going home, but it's not home. It's the final pull of karma calling you back into incarnation, not because you failed, but because you forgot. This is the final chance. The window begins to close, and unless you are fully awake, unless your awareness is unwavering, you won't see it happening. You'll step into a new body the way you step into a dream, believing it's real, believing it's all there is. And just like that, you begin again, a new life, a new name, a new story built on the momentum of your last. And yet, there is still hope, even in these final stages, because awareness once activated doesn't disappear. It lingers, it waits, it watches, and if in that final moment before rebirth you remember who you are, you can still be free. But freedom is not an escape. It's not a reward for the righteous. It's not a secret given to the elite. It's the natural state of an awakened being. It's what you were before the noise, before the body, before the story. And it's what you return to when you've seen through it all. The Tibetan Book of the Dead was never about avoiding death. It was about dying consciously, moving through the bardo with your eyes open, meeting every projection, every illusion, every fear, every temptation, not with resistance, but with recognition. That's the key, not to fight the bardo, but to recognize it. Recognize the peaceful deities as your compassion, recognize the wrathful ones as your unhealed pain, recognize the life review as your soul teaching itself, recognize the pull of rebirth as the momentum of desire, and recognize the clear light not as something to reach for, but as what you've always been. Because the truth is, you were never meant to be trapped here. The cycle was never meant to be a prison. It became one through forgetting, through distraction, through generations of souls being born into systems that teach everything but awareness. You were taught to obey, not observe, to memorize, not awaken, to fear death instead of preparing for it. And in that conditioning you lost the one skill that matters most, the ability to remain aware in the face of the unknown. But that skill can be regained, right now, in this breath, in this moment, because the same awareness that navigates the bardo is the awareness you have access to in your everyday life. It's not something you earn, It's something you notice. The sound of your breath, the space between your thoughts, the stillness behind your eyes. That is it. That is the same awareness that will greet you after death. And the more you come back to it now, the more familiar it becomes. So when the clear light comes, you won't be startled. You'll recognize it as yourself, and you'll rest in it, like coming home. You'll realize there was never anywhere to go, nothing to become, nothing to fix, just the remembering of what you always were. Pure awareness, dancing through form, playing in illusion, and finally, waking up. And maybe that's the greatest secret of all, that this life isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what's whole, not about escaping the world, but seeing through it, living with your feet on the ground and your heart in eternity. That's what the ancient teachers knew. That's why they risked everything to preserve this knowledge, not for fame, not for power, but for souls like you, who were ready to remember. Because once you remember, you don't just change your own path, you change the field around you. Your energy becomes a signal, a lighthouse, a frequency that awakens others. You become the ripple that reaches across lifetimes. And maybe that's why you're really here, not just to avoid suffering, but to become a guide, a light for those still lost in the illusion. You've walked through it, you've seen it, you've faced it, and now you can hold space for others to do the same. This is the power of conscious dying. It doesn't just free you, it frees generations. It breaks the chain. It turns the cycle of death and rebirth into a spiral of awakening. Each lifetime becomes more lucid. Each challenge becomes more sacred. Each moment becomes more alive. And eventually, even reincarnation becomes a choice. Not a compulsion, not a prison, but a sacred return if you choose it, to serve, to teach, to love, to bring light into dark places, not because you need to, but because you can. That is liberation. Not escape, but mastery. And that mastery begins here, in how you live, in how you breathe, in how you respond to this moment, and the next, and the one after that. Because every moment is a micro-death, a letting go, a surrender. And every surrender is training. You train yourself to meet discomfort without running, to meet change without clinging, to meet the unknown with open eyes. And eventually, when the final breath comes, you meet that too with grace. And in that grace, the cycle ends. Not in a blaze of glory, not with trumpets, but with a soft smile, a knowing breath, a stillness that says, I remember now. You've walked the long road of forgetting. You've played every role. You've tasted every illusion. And now, you're ready to come home. Not to a place, but to yourself. You don't need to fear the end anymore, because it's not the end. It never was. The truth is, there is no end, only transitions, only shifts in perspective. The soul doesn't die. It transforms. It lets go of one mask and picks up another. It walks through one illusion only to awaken in the next. And if you don't realize that, you'll keep mistaking every chapter for the whole book. But you've been more than a character. You've always been the author. Every time you incarnated, you forgot. You believed the world was outside of you. You believed death was something that happened to you. You believed love could be lost and fear was real. And yet, something always pulled you back to the truth. A dream. A synchronicity. A feeling that this life wasn't all there was. And maybe that's why you're hearing these words now. Because that deeper part of you is ready to take over. Not your name, not your role, but the real you. The timeless witness who has seen lifetimes pass like smoke in the wind. The reason the Tibetan Book of the Dead matters now more than ever is because we are surrounded by a world that feeds the illusion. You are being trained every day to identify with your image, your job, your gender, your nation, your beliefs. But none of that will follow you through the veil. The only thing that will remain is what you've become in consciousness, how awake you are, how free you are from the story. So the question you must ask yourself isn't what happens after death. The question is, Who will you be when death removes everything that isn't truly you? This is why the most advanced spiritual beings don't wait until the last breath to start dying. They die to their ego every single day. They watch their reactions. They sit with discomfort. They feel the pain and release the story. They let the old versions of themselves die over and over, so that when death comes they recognize it as a friend, as the final form of letting go, and they move through it with the same grace they moved through every challenge life gave them. This is your preparation. Every moment you spend becoming more conscious is a thread weaving your soul's robe, and one day you will wear it into the afterlife, not made of silk or gold, but made of clarity, compassion, presence. Those are the only things that will matter, and they can only be cultivated now. The mind will try to distract you. It will say, not now, maybe later, there's too much to do, too much to figure out. But what if there's nothing to figure out? What if the answer is simpler than you ever believed? What if awakening isn't about gaining anything, but losing everything that was never you in the first place? That's the hidden doorway. That's the crack in the illusion. The more you surrender the false, the more the truth shines through, and you start to see it everywhere, in the eyes of a stranger, in the silence between your thoughts, in the way the wind touches your skin, in the knowing that nothing in this world is permanent, and yet everything is connected. That is where peace lives. Not in control, not in certainty, but in surrender, in presence, in the full acceptance that life and death are not enemies but lovers dancing in the same eternal rhythm. One breath in, one breath out. That's all it's ever been. So ask yourself, what are you still clinging to? What fears are still running your decisions? What version of yourself are you still trying to protect, even though it's long outgrown? Those are your chains, and you don't need them anymore. The soul doesn't want to be safe, it wants to be free. And freedom doesn't come from doing more, it comes from letting go. Letting go of who you think you're supposed to be. Letting go of the roles you've played to make others comfortable. Letting go of the pain you've used to justify your walls. Letting go of the idea that death is something to fear. Because once you let go, you'll see it clearly. The bardo isn't a punishment, it's an opportunity. A mirror showing you everything that was left unresolved. Not to judge you, not to shame you, but to give you one last chance to face it all with awareness. And if you do, you won't have to return, unless you choose to. Unless your love is so great, your compassion so vast, that you decide to come back not out of need, but out of service. To be a light, to be a reminder, to whisper into the dream of others just as I'm whispering into yours right now. Wake up. You are not who you think you are. You never were. You are more ancient than the stars, more expansive than time. You are the watcher behind lifetimes, the awareness that cannot be destroyed. And this life, this death, this bardo, it's only a chapter. The final secret is this. Liberation isn't something you earn, it's something you remember. It's not about becoming enlightened, it's about seeing that you always were. You've just been dreaming. And now it's time to wake up. You've heard the truth now, not the watered-down version, not the version wrapped in fear, but the raw, ancient, forbidden truth they never wanted you to hear, that the 49 days after death are not chaos, they are initiation, that the visions you see aren't judgments, they're mirrors, that your next life isn't fate, it's choice. And the most powerful realization of all is that you're already in it. This life, right now, this breath, this moment, it is the bardo. It's not something that begins after your heart stops. It's happening here, in the space between one thought and the next, in the space between waking and dreaming, between who you were yesterday and who you are now. Life is a continuous dying. Every moment is a door, and every door is asking you the same question. Are you awake or are you asleep? Because this is the test. Not later, now. This world is the illusion. This identity is the mask. The body is the temple you walk in for a time, but it's not your home. You've had hundreds, you've worn many names, and underneath all of them something has never changed. Something has always remained, the still point behind every storm, the silent witness behind every scream, the light behind every life. And when death finally arrives, when the body breathes its last breath, you don't disappear. You expand. You step through the veil. And what meets you on the other side isn't heaven or hell. It's you. Every layer, every shadow, every unprocessed emotion, every beautiful dream you didn't believe you deserved, all of it waiting, all of it reflecting. But you won't be confused, not anymore, because now you know, now you've remembered, and remembering is everything. You'll see the peaceful deities and know they are your compassion, your insight, your sacred potential. You'll see the wrathful ones and recognize the parts of yourself you had locked away. You won't run, you won't fight. You'll look them in the eyes and say, I see you, I honor you, but I am no longer afraid. You'll experience your life not as a story but as a feeling, as a vibration moving through others. You'll understand what your presence did, what your energy offered. You'll realize that every word spoken in love shaped the cosmos. Every moment of silence held in judgment rippled through time. And you'll forgive yourself, not because you did everything right, but because you understand now. You see the pattern. You see the pain that was passed down, and you choose to end it. You'll be offered rebirth. Again. The universe will open doors to new lives, new lessons, new forms, but this time you'll choose with clarity, not from desire, not from fear, not from lack, but from love, from truth. Or maybe you won't choose at all. Maybe you'll remain in the light. Maybe you'll dissolve into it. Maybe you'll remember that there's nothing left to become. Because this is the secret behind every sacred text, every whispered prayer, every hidden teaching. You are not here to achieve something, you are here to remember what you already are. And death, beautiful, terrifying, holy death, is the final invitation to do so. And now you have the map. Now you've seen behind the curtain. Now you know that your greatest tool is not your beliefs, your rituals, or your knowledge. It is your awareness. That still, quiet presence that watches. That presence is your guide through life. It is your guide through death. It is your true self, untouched by time. So the next time you feel fear rise in your chest, breathe. The next time the world tells you who you are, pause. The next time life feels like it's falling apart, remember. Remember that you've lived before. That you've died before, that you've walked through the bardo with your eyes closed, but this time is different. This time you're awake. And when your final moment comes, you'll do something most souls never do. You'll smile. Not because it's over, but because you finally understand. You'll recognize the light not as something foreign, but as the truest reflection of yourself. You won't run. You'll merge, and in that merging all illusions will collapse. The wheel will stop spinning, the longing will dissolve, and all that will remain is you. Infinite, boundless, free. So now the question is not what happens after death. The question is, what will you do with the life you still have? Will you treat it like a burden, like a waiting room, like a distraction? Or will you use it as a preparation? Will you become the master of your own consciousness? Will you turn your attention inward and walk through your fears while you still have the chance? Will you release the old patterns, the clinging, the stories that are not yours? Will you live as someone who is not afraid to die? Because if you do, death will become your greatest liberation, and the bardo will become your bridge. And the 49 days will not be a trial. They will be your final awakening,